Tonight, we are going to explore something very simple together. Something the ancient Buddhist teachers have pointed to for over 2,000 years. It is the art of letting go. Not letting go in a forceful way, not pushing anything away, but the kind of letting go that happens naturally, the way snow melts in the first warmth of spring. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you are listening from. There is a beautiful image from the contemplative traditions that will travel with us through this evening. It is the image of ice and water. Ice is hard and solid and fixed. Water is soft and flowing and free. And yet they are the same substance. The only difference is warmth. Tonight, we will explore what it means to allow the mind to soften, to unfreeze, to return to its natural, flowing state. And perhaps, without even trying, something inside will begin to gently thaw. So settle in. Let your body be comfortable. Let your eyes close if that feels right. And let us begin this journey together. In the ancient Pali texts, the Buddha offered a teaching so simple it could fit in the palm of your hand. He said, "All conditioned things are impermanent." When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. That single line has echoed across more than 2,500 years. And yet, for most of us, it remains something we understand with the head, but have not yet felt in the heart. Tonight, let us see if we can close that gap, gently, together. Because when we truly feel the truth of change, something remarkable happens. The heart relaxes, the grip loosens, and a quiet, surprising peace begins to settle in. This is the beginning of what we might call the unfrozen mind. Let us start with a question. Have you ever noticed how much energy you spend trying to keep things the same? Trying to keep your body the way it was? Trying to keep a relationship from shifting? Trying to hold on to a feeling that was pleasant or push away one that was not? We do this so naturally, so constantly, that we barely notice we are doing it at all. And yet, everything around us is changing. It has always been changing. The seasons turn. The clouds reshape themselves against the sky. The breath you just took is already gone, and a new one has arrived. The Buddhist teachings call this impermanence, and they place it at the very center of the path to freedom. Not because change is something to fear, but because when we stop resisting it, when we truly allow ourselves to rest inside the truth of it, suffering begins to dissolve on its own. Like ice meeting warm water, like tension leaving the shoulders after a long day. The trouble is, we know this intellectually. We can nod along and say, yes, of course, everything changes, but knowing it in the mind and living it in the body are two very different things. There is a gap between understanding and experience, and that gap is where most of our suffering lives. So how do we cross that gap? Not through more thinking, not through belief, but through a gentle, patient willingness to look at what is actually happening, moment by moment, in our own lives. Let us explore a story about a teacher who learned this lesson on a mountain trail. This teacher had been practicing meditation for many years. He was experienced, steady, and deeply familiar with the teachings on impermanence. One afternoon, while hiking along a rocky path in the hills, his foot slipped on a wet stone. He fell hard, and his knee struck the ground with a sharp crack of pain. It was serious enough that he could not walk, and his companions had to help carry him back down the trail to where he was staying. That evening, he lay on his bed with his knee swollen and throbbing. He had a busy schedule ahead. Teachings to offer, places to travel, people who were expecting him. And the mind, as minds do, began to spin. "How could I have been so careless?" the mind said. "I should have been paying more attention. I should have watched where I was stepping. How could I let this happen?" Have you ever had a conversation like that with yourself? That familiar voice of self-blame, turning a simple accident into a personal failure? The teacher noticed the direction his thoughts were heading. He could feel the pull of it, the way the mind wanted to spiral downward into regret and worry and self-pity. And in that moment, he made a gentle choice. He did not fight the thoughts. He did not scold himself for having them. He simply paused and asked himself a quiet question. Given that I have a body, is it really so surprising that something like this would happen? And with that question, something shifted. Of course the body is vulnerable. Of course accidents happen. This is not a mistake. This is what it means to have a physical form in a world of constant change. The rocks are hard, the trails are uneven, and the body does what bodies do. From that moment of acceptance, a simple phrase arose in his mind. It came softly, almost like a whisper, and it became something he returned to again and again in the years that followed. Anything can happen anytime. Now, you might expect that such a phrase would feel unsettling. Anything can happen anytime. It sounds like it could be the opening line of a worry, the beginning of anxiety. But something surprising happens when you let those words settle in without resistance. Try it now, if you like. Just let the phrase rest gently in your awareness. Anything can happen anytime. Rather than tensing up, you may notice that something in you softens. Because what you are really saying is, I am not going to spend my energy trying to control what cannot be controlled. I am not going to live defensively, bracing against the next unexpected thing. I am going to acknowledge, with honesty and with gentleness, that this is simply how life is. And in that acknowledgement, there is freedom. There is space. The shoulders drop half an inch. The jaw unclenches. The breath comes a little more easily. This is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is something much more alive than that. It is the kind of peace that comes from no longer fighting with reality. The Buddha had a phrase for this too. He called it seeing things as they are, not as we wish they were, not as we fear they might become, just as they are, right now, in this moment. The great Thai forest teacher, Ajahn Chah, once put it beautifully. He held up a glass of water and said to his students, "You see this glass? I love this glass. It holds the water admirably. When the sun shines on it, it reflects the light beautifully. But when I put this glass on the shelf and the wind knocks it over and it falls and breaks, I say, of course, I already knew this glass was broken. Because I understood its nature." He was not being pessimistic. He was being free. He loved the glass completely, and he held it lightly. That is the art of the unfrozen mind. Let us explore another story. This one is quieter, more inward. A young student had traveled far from home to attend a long meditation retreat at a monastery nestled in the countryside. He had been practicing for several weeks, and the early days were very hard. His mind was restless and scattered. He could not concentrate. His body ached from sitting. And slowly, A heavy mood of discouragement settled over him like a grey fog. He sat in the meditation hall one evening, feeling the full weight of it. The thought arose, I am not good at this. I am failing. Everyone else seems peaceful, and I am just sitting here struggling. It was a familiar kind of suffering, the kind many of us know well. The feeling that we are somehow falling behind, that we are not doing life correctly, that something is wrong with us that is not wrong with other people. But then, in the middle of that heavy mood, a small, clear thought appeared. It was almost playful. In 6 months, will I even remember that I felt this way? He paused. Would he? Probably not. In 6 months, this evening, this particular heaviness, this specific flavor of discouragement would be completely forgotten, gone like a cloud that drifts across the sky and dissolves into blue. What about 3 months from now? 1 month? 1 week? Will I remember this exact feeling in 3 days? And with each question, the mood grew lighter. Not because the feeling was wrong or needed to be pushed away, but because he could see, directly and simply, that it was passing. It was a visitor, not a permanent resident. It had arrived, and it would leave, just as every feeling he had ever felt had eventually left. This is not a trick of the mind. It is a clear seeing of how things actually work. The Buddha called it right view, the willingness to see experience as it truly is, arising, present for a time, and then dissolving back into the stream. There is a beautiful simplicity to this teaching. We do not need to learn complicated techniques or master difficult philosophies. We simply need to pay attention to what is already happening. Think of it this way. Have you ever watched a river? Not going anywhere in particular, just sitting by the bank and watching the water move. The current carries leaves and twigs and little eddies of foam. Each one appears, drifts past, and is gone. And the river keeps flowing. Your experience is like that river. Sensations arise in the body and pass away. Sounds appear and fade. Thoughts surface and dissolve. Moods come and go. Even the breath, that most intimate companion, is never the same twice. Each inhale is a small arrival. Each exhale is a small letting go. When we see this clearly, when we actually watch it happening with a gentle and steady attention, something in the mind begins to unclench. Not because we have figured something out, but because we are no longer fighting what is. We are simply resting in the middle of the flow, like a smooth stone at the bottom of that river, letting the water pass over and around and through. This is what the Buddhist teachers mean when they speak of non-grasping. It is not a cold detachment. It is not a pulling away from life. It is a warm, open, relaxed way of being present with whatever comes. A great Thai meditation master, in the years before he passed, left this teaching with his students. He said, "If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. Your struggles with the world will have come to an end." There is something else worth noticing here, something easy to miss, because it is so close to us. Our bodies are changing. They have always been changing. The body you have right now is not the body you had 10 years ago, or even 10 days ago. Cells are replacing themselves. Muscles are shifting. The hair grows, the skin renews, the heart beats a rhythm that is never quite the same from one moment to the next. And yet, How often do we relate to the body as though it should stay the same? As though any change in it is an error, a malfunction, something that should not be happening. When the body changes through the natural process of aging, we suffer if we cling to what it used to be. When it changes through illness or accident, we suffer if we treat the change as a mistake, as something that was not supposed to happen. But the Buddhist teachings invite a different relationship with the body. Not one of neglect, but one of gentle honesty. This body is made of the same stuff as the rest of the natural world. It is subject to the same laws. It grows and changes and eventually returns to the earth, just as the leaves fall from the trees and become soil again. This is not a tragedy. It is the quiet, ongoing miracle of nature doing what nature does. When we hold the body lightly, when we care for it with kindness, but do not cling to it with desperation, there is a beautiful ease that comes. A sense of being at home in a changing world, rather than constantly at odds with it. This is another small taste of the unfrozen mind. The mind that does not freeze around any particular version of how things should be. The mind that remains soft and open and flowing, even as everything around it shifts and turns. Before we move on, let us try a small experiment together. You do not need to do anything special. Just notice, right now, whatever you are feeling. Perhaps there is a sensation in the body, a warmth or a coolness or a gentle pressure where your body meets the surface beneath you. Perhaps there is a sound somewhere in the background. Perhaps there is a thought drifting through the mind, or a mood coloring your experience in some subtle way. Whatever is here, simply notice it. And then notice this: it is already changing. The sensation shifts, the sound fades, or is replaced by another. The thought dissolves, and a new one forms. Even your attention itself moves and flows, like a beam of light playing across water. You do not have to do anything about this. You do not have to make it happen. It is already happening, all on its own. This is the truth of impermanence, not as a concept, but as a living, breathing reality. It is here, in every moment, offered freely, asking only that we notice. And when we do notice, even briefly, there is a letting go that happens by itself. Not a forced release, but a natural softening. The way a fist relaxes when you stop trying to hold on. The way the breath deepens when you stop trying to control it. This is the doorway the Buddha spoke of. Not a grand entrance. Not something far away. Just this. Just here. Just the simple, continuous flow of experience met with a gentle and open heart. In the Zen tradition, there is a saying, the whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in one dewdrop on the grass. All of the vast teachings on impermanence, all of the wisdom of the ages, can be found in a single moment of honest seeing. You do not need to travel to a distant monastery. You do not need to sit for hours in perfect stillness. You only need to look at what is already in front of you and notice that it is moving, changing, flowing. And in that noticing, the mind begins to thaw. Just a little. Just enough. Like the first warm day at the end of a long winter, when the ice at the edge of the pond begins to soften, and you can hear the quiet sound of water finding its way again. Anything can happen any time. And that is not a reason to be afraid. That is a reason to be free. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice how you are feeling. There is no need to judge or change anything. Simply rest in this breath. And when you are ready, we will continue together. There is an old Buddhist teaching that compares our lives to a dream. Not to say that our lives are unreal or that they do not matter, but to point to something we all sense if we are honest with ourselves. There is a strange, shimmering quality to experience. It arises, it feels so vivid and solid while it is happening, and then it is gone. And once it is gone, it might as well have been a dream. The Buddha once said, "It is in the nature of things that joy arises in a person who is free from remorse. But what keeps us from that ease, that natural joy? Often, it is the habit of reaching forward, always forward, into the next moment, as if the thing we need is just around the corner. Just one more step ahead. Let us look at this gently together, because hidden inside this habit is one of the most freeing discoveries on the entire path. Think back to a moment from the past few days. It does not matter how small. Maybe you were eating a meal you had been looking forward to. Maybe you were lying down after a long afternoon. Maybe you were watching the sky change color. Whatever it was, bring it to mind now. Can you feel how real it was at the time? How full and present and alive? The textures, the temperature, the particular way the light fell across the room. It felt like something that mattered. And now notice, where is that moment? You cannot touch it. You cannot return to it. It has dissolved completely, like a handful of mist. All that remains is a faint impression, a memory already softening at the edges. This is true of every experience you have ever had. Every single one. The wonderful ones and the difficult ones. The moments of deep connection and the moments of loneliness. The celebrations and the ordinary Tuesday afternoons. They have all passed through you like water through an open hand. When the ancient teachers say that life is like a dream, this is what they mean. Not that it is worthless, but that it is transparent. It does not hold still. It cannot be grasped. And there is something deeply peaceful in allowing yourself to see that clearly. But here is where it gets interesting. And here is where, if we are paying attention, we might begin to smile at ourselves with real affection. Even though we know all of this, even though every experience we have ever had has confirmed it, we keep doing the same thing. We keep leaning forward into the next moment, convinced that this time, this next experience, will be the one that finally satisfies. You can watch this in yourself. It is happening all the time, often so quietly that we do not notice. You are sitting comfortably, and the thought arises, I could make a cup of tea, and suddenly, the present moment, which was perfectly fine, is not quite enough. The mind has already traveled to the kitchen, already imagined the warmth of the mug in your hands, already tasted the first sip. You are no longer here. You are there, in a moment that does not exist yet. And when you do eventually make the tea and take that first sip, it is pleasant for a few seconds, and then the mind is already reaching again, toward the next thing. There is a playful honesty in seeing this clearly. We have done this 10,000 times, 100,000 times, and each time, the experience we were so eager for has come and gone and left us right back where we started, looking ahead, leaning forward, anticipating. Let us explore a story about this leaning, A group of students had been practicing in silence at a retreat center for many days. The sitting was deep. The schedule was simple and quiet. Wake, meditate, eat, walk, meditate, sleep. Day after day, the same gentle rhythm. By the middle of the retreat, something began to happen in the minds of many of the students. The silence, which had at first been restful, began to feel confining. And the mind, as minds do, began to wander forward, to lean toward what would come next. One student found herself spending entire meditation periods planning what she would do on the first day after the retreat ended. She imagined calling a dear friend. She could hear the conversation in her head, the laughter, the stories she would tell. She imagined the drive home, the familiar streets, her own bed with its particular pillows. She imagined stopping at a small cafe she loved, ordering her favorite drink, sitting by the window and watching people walk by. Each of these fantasies was vivid. Each one carried a little spark of pleasure, a little hum of anticipation. The mind was alive with them. But one afternoon, sitting quietly in the hall, a question drifted up from somewhere beneath all the planning. And then what? She would call her friend. They would talk. It would be lovely. And then it would be over, and she would be sitting alone again, and the mind would already be reaching for the next thing. She would drink her favorite coffee. It would taste wonderful for the first 2 or 3 sips, and then it would just be coffee. And she would be reaching again. She would sleep in her own bed. It would feel so good. For one night, maybe 2. And then it would just be her bed, ordinary and unremarkable, and the mind would be looking elsewhere. And then what? And then what? And then what? It was not a depressing realization. It was a kind one. It was the mind finally seeing, with a gentle clarity, the pattern it had been running for as long as she could remember. Always reaching, always arriving, always reaching again. There is a phrase that sometimes circulates among people of a certain age. Someone once observed that after they turned 55, breakfast started happening every 15 minutes. There is a warmth to that observation, a rueful humor, because we all recognize it. Time does seem to move faster as we grow older. The years begin to blur. Seasons fold into each other. You look up, and another year has somehow passed, and you are not entirely sure where it went. But this is not just about aging. It is about the nature of experience itself. Experience is always arriving and always departing. It never stays. It cannot stay. That is not a flaw. It is the very nature of the stream. And when we see this, something opens up. Not sadness, though there can be a tender quality to it. More like a kind of wide, quiet honesty. This is how it is. This is how it has always been. And fighting it, resisting it, clinging to moments as they pass, does not keep them here. It only makes us tired. Now here is where the teaching takes a beautiful turn, because the Buddhist path is not about becoming numb to experience. It is not about withdrawing from life, or deciding that nothing matters, or sitting in a cave watching the years go by with a blank expression. Quite the opposite. There is a kind of paradox at the heart of this wisdom, and it is one of the most important things we will touch on together tonight. The very same experiences that leave us unsatisfied when we chase them, when we grasp at them, when we lean into them with that familiar energy of wanting, these very same experiences become something entirely different when we meet them with presence. A cup of tea, reached for out of craving, is a brief pleasure followed by a vague emptiness. But a cup of tea received with full attention, with a gentle awareness of its warmth and fragrance, and the feeling of the mug against the palms, is something else entirely. It is not about the tea anymore. It is about the quality of mind that meets it. This is what the teachers mean when they say that every experience can become part of the path. Not because we need to turn everything into a spiritual exercise, but because the way we meet what arises changes everything. When we stop grasping, we start receiving. When we stop leaning forward, we start being here. And being here, it turns out, is where all the richness actually lives. The Zen teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, once said, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." This is not a sentimental statement. It is a precise one. The joy he is pointing to is not the joy of getting what you want. It is the joy of being fully awake to what is already here. The texture of the air, the weight of your own body, the quiet hum of life going on all around you, in every direction. There is a story from one of the contemplative traditions about two monks who were walking together through the countryside. They had been walking for a long time, and the younger monk was growing restless. "When will we arrive?" he asked. The older monk smiled. "Where do you think we are going?" "To the monastery, of course." "And what will you do when you arrive?" "I will sit. I will drink water. I will rest." The older monk stopped walking and looked at his companion. "And what are you doing right now?" The younger monk opened his mouth to answer, and then he understood. He was already walking. He was already breathing. The sun was already warm on his shoulders. The path was already beneath his feet. "Ah," he said quietly. The older monk nodded. "Yes," he said. "Ah." This is the quiet revolution the Buddhist teachings offer. Not a revolution of action, but a revolution of attention. We do not need to change what we are doing. We need to change how we are meeting it. When we live in the habit of always reaching forward, we miss what is right in front of us. We miss the texture of this moment, the one that is actually happening, the only one that is ever actually happening. We trade the real for the imagined, the present for the anticipated. And the anticipated, when it finally arrives, has already become the present, which we are already trading for the next anticipated thing. It is like walking down a road lined with beautiful trees, but always looking at the horizon, always watching for the destination. Meanwhile, the dappled light is falling through the leaves. The birds are singing. The air smells of earth and green things. All of it is right here, right now, asking nothing of you except that you notice. The Buddha put it simply: do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment, not because the past and future are bad, but because the present is the only place where life actually happens. It is the only place where the mind can truly rest. It is the only place where the ice can begin to soften. So perhaps the question is not, how do I stop wanting? That would just be another form of wanting to not want. The question is gentler than that. Can I notice the lean? Can I notice when the mind has left this moment and traveled to one that does not yet exist? And can I notice it with warmth, with affection, the way you might notice a child reaching for something on a high shelf. Not with judgment, just with a kind, clear seeing. And in the noticing, something happens on its own. The mind pauses, the reaching relaxes, and for a moment, just a moment, you are simply here, not going anywhere, not needing anything, just this. That moment is worth more than you might think, because in that moment, the mind is not frozen. It is not clinging to what might be. It is soft and open and present. It is, in its own quiet way, free. The dream keeps dreaming. Experiences keep arising and passing. The river keeps flowing. But you, sitting here, breathing, listening, you are no longer lost in the dream. You are awake inside it. And that makes all the difference. Let us pause here for a moment. Just rest in the stillness. Notice the breath, if you like. Notice the quiet. And when you are ready, we will continue together. A Zen master was once asked by a student, "What is the fundamental nature of reality?" The master picked up a small stone from the ground and held it out in his open palm. "What do you see?" he asked. "A stone," the student said. "Look more closely." The student leaned in, studying the stone, its rough surface, the tiny flecks of mineral catching the light. "I see a stone," he said again. The master smiled. "That is your first problem. Tonight, let us look more closely. Not because reality is hiding from us, but because what we take to be solid and fixed is, when we look with enough care, something far more fluid and surprising than we imagined. And in that surprise, there is a deep and unexpected rest." Let us begin with something familiar, an experience most of us have had. You are sitting in a darkened room, watching a story unfold on a screen. Perhaps it is a love story. Perhaps it is an adventure. Whatever it is, you are completely absorbed. The characters feel real to you. Their struggles are your struggles. When they are in danger, your heart beats faster. When they find each other again after a long separation, you feel a warmth in your chest. Your hands may even clench without you realizing it. Your breath may quicken or slow, following the rhythm of the story. For those 2 hours, or however long the story lasts, you are inside it. It is your world. The room around you has disappeared. The seat beneath you has disappeared. The person sitting next to you has disappeared. There is only the story and you living in it. And then something happens. A small thing. Maybe someone nearby coughs. Maybe you shift in your seat and notice the armrest under your elbow. Or maybe your eyes drift upward for just a moment and you see it, the beam of light, projected from somewhere behind you, carrying the images to the screen. And in that instant, something cracks open. You realize that nothing is actually happening up there. No one is falling in love. No one is running through the rain. There are no mountains, no oceans, no faraway cities. There is only light playing across a flat white surface. The feelings were real. Your racing heart was real. Your tears were real. But the thing that caused them? It was light and shadow, arranged just so. Now, what does that say about all the other dramas we live inside of every day? This is not meant to make life feel empty. It is meant to loosen the grip, just a little. Because we do this same thing all day long, every day. We watch the stories that our own minds project onto the screen of experience, and we respond to them as though they are absolutely solid and absolutely real. We feel threatened by a thought about tomorrow. We feel grief over a memory that is long past. We feel anger at someone who is not even in the room, someone who may be sleeping peacefully on the other side of town, entirely unaware of the argument we are having with them inside our own head. The stories feel so real. And in a way, they are real. The feelings they produce are real. The sensations in the body are real. But the stories themselves, when we look closely, are made of the same substance as that beam of light in the darkened room. They are mind stuff, projected onto the moment, and we have forgotten that we are the ones doing the projecting. The Buddhist teachings have a gentle way of pointing to this. They do not say that the world is an illusion. They say that the world is like an illusion, like a dream, like a reflection in still water. It is real enough to engage with, to care about, to respond to, but it is not as solid as it appears. And when we see that, we stop taking our reactions quite so seriously. We stop gripping quite so tightly. We allow a little more space around the stories the mind tells. And in that space, there is breathing room. There is rest. Let us go a little deeper, but gently. When you hear a sound, what is actually happening? We say, "I heard a bird singing," and we feel that the bird and the singing are out there, separate from us, and that we are simply receiving the sound as it is. But the contemplative traditions invite us to look more carefully at this ordinary moment. What is reaching your ear is not a song. It is tiny waves of pressure in the air, ripples of compression and expansion, moving outward from the bird's throat. When these ripples meet the ear, something astonishing happens. They are translated, transformed, interpreted by the body and the mind into what we experience as music. The sweetness of the song, the beauty of it, the way it makes you feel on a quiet morning, none of that exists in the air itself. The air has no sweetness. The pressure waves have no beauty. The mind is creating all of it, weaving raw vibration into something rich and meaningful. And it is not just sound. Think of color, the redness of a sunset, the green of new leaves in spring. These are not qualities that live in the world outside your eyes. What is out there is light, vibrating at different frequencies. And the mind takes those frequencies and conjures, from nothing, the entire world of color. The soft gold of candlelight, the blue of a lake at dusk, the white of fresh snow. There is nothing out there that is golden. There is nothing out there that is blue. The mind is painting all of it, moment by moment, in exquisite detail. Now, this is not meant to be a science lesson, and it is certainly not meant to make the sunset less beautiful. If anything, it is meant to make it more beautiful. Because when you realize that the mind is doing all of this, creating color and sound and texture and fragrance from raw energy and vibration, you begin to appreciate just how extraordinary ordinary experience actually is. Think of the scent of flowers on a warm afternoon. Somewhere, a blossom has released tiny molecules into the air. They float and drift, and eventually, one of them lands on a receptor inside your nose. And from that single, invisible molecule, the mind produces an entire experience. The rich, sweet, unmistakable aroma, the pleasure it brings, the memories it may call up, a garden you once visited, a person you once loved. All of this, from a molecule you cannot see, meeting a receptor you did not know you had. The ancient teachers may not have had the language of molecules and receptors, but they understood something profound about the nature of experience. They understood that the mind is not a passive mirror, reflecting a world that exists independently out there. The mind is an active participant, shaping and creating the experience of reality, moment by moment. And when you see this, when you feel it directly, and not just think about it, something wonderful happens. The boundary between in here and out there begins to soften. The rigid sense of a solid world on one side and a separate self on the other begins to loosen. And what remains is something more open, more fluid, more alive. The unfrozen mind, once again. Let us explore another layer of this, one that is very close to home. When you sit quietly and pay attention to the body, really pay attention, you might expect to find something solid. After all, the body feels solid. The hand feels like a hand. The leg feels like a leg. There seems to be a clear shape, a definite boundary, a sense of something firm and fixed. But if you stay with it, if you let your attention settle more deeply, something begins to shift. The apparently solid hand starts to reveal itself as a field of sensation. Tingling, warmth, pressure, pulsing, vibration. The more closely you attend, the more the solidity dissolves into movement. What seemed like one thing turns out to be countless tiny events, arising and passing in rapid succession, like sparks from a fire. The breath is like this too. We call it a breath, as if it were a single thing. But if you follow it closely, one breath is a whole symphony. The cool air at the nostrils, the subtle expansion of the chest, the stretch of the belly, the pause at the top, barely noticeable, the soft release, the settling, each phase made up of innumerable small sensations, each one arising and vanishing almost instantly. This is what the Buddhist teachers mean when they talk about seeing impermanence at deeper and deeper levels. Not just that seasons change and years pass, but that experience itself, right here, right now, is a constantly flowing stream. Nothing stays still. Nothing holds its shape. Everything is in motion, all the time. And rather than being frightening, this is actually deeply restful. Because what we are really seeing is that there is nothing to hold on to. And when there is nothing to hold on to, the effort of holding on can finally be released. There is a traditional teaching that compares this kind of seeing to looking at a familiar object under a very powerful magnifying lens. At first, you are looking at, say, a smooth piece of cloth. It appears uniform, consistent, solid. But as the magnification increases, the smooth surface gives way to threads. The threads give way to fibers. The fibers give way to something that does not look like cloth at all anymore. It looks like a landscape, a wilderness of intersecting filaments and gaps and spaces. The cloth has not changed. It is still the same piece of fabric. But your perception of it has changed completely. And you realize that what you were calling cloth was a kind of shorthand, a summary, a story the mind was telling about something far more complex and dynamic. Our entire experience is like this. The mind summarizes. It creates the impression of solidity of continuity, of a world made up of fixed things with clear boundaries. And this summary is useful. It helps us navigate the day. It helps us function. But it is not the whole truth. And when we look more carefully, when we allow ourselves to see beneath the summary, we find something astonishing. Not a world of fixed things, but a world of movement. Not a world of separate objects, but a world of relationships and flows and constant transformation. The Zen tradition has a lovely way of pointing to this. A teacher might ask a student, "What is the sound of the rain?" And the student might say, "The sound of the rain is the sound of the rain." And the teacher might say, "Listen again, because the sound of the rain is not one thing. It is 1,000 things, 1,000,000 things. Drops striking leaves and stones and earth and water, each with its own tone, its own rhythm, its own brief life. The mind gathers all of this into a single experience and calls it rain. But the reality beneath the word is vast and shimmering and endlessly detailed. So what does all of this mean for us, here, now, resting in the quiet of this evening? It means that the world is not as heavy as we think it is. It is not as solid, not as fixed, not as permanent, not as serious as it sometimes feels. This is not a reason to be careless. It is a reason to be at ease. When we see through the movie on the screen, we do not stop watching. We simply watch differently, with more wonder, with less fear, with a lightness that allows us to enjoy the story without being trapped inside it. When we see that the mind is creating color and sound and beauty from raw vibration, we do not stop appreciating beauty. We appreciate it more because we see it for what it is, a gift from the mind itself, offered fresh in every moment. When we see that the body is not solid but flowing, we do not stop caring for it. We care for it more tenderly because we see how delicate it is, how fluid, how alive. The Diamond Sutra, one of the most beloved texts in the Buddhist tradition, offers a verse that has comforted and awakened practitioners for centuries. It says, "All composed things are like a dream, like a phantom, like a drop of dew, like a flash of lightning. This is how to look at them. This is how to hold them. Like a dream, like a drop of dew, not solid, not permanent, but beautiful, precious even, perhaps more precious because they do not last." So tonight, if you like, you might try something very simple. Not a practice exactly, more of a way of seeing. As you lie here or sit here, just let the experience of this moment be what it is. Do not try to hold it. Do not try to push it away. Just notice how it comes and goes, all on its own. A sound arises and fades. A sensation appears and dissolves. A thought forms and drifts away, like a cloud in an open sky. You do not have to do anything about any of it. It is all happening by itself, this constant, effortless flow. And you are here, awake to it, present in the middle of it, not as a fixed point, not as a solid thing, but as something more like the sky itself, open, spacious, and undisturbed by what passes through. Nothing is really going on, and everything is going on. Both are true, at the same time, in the same breath. And holding both of those truths together, lightly, gently, without needing to choose between them, is one of the deepest forms of rest there is. Let us pause here for a moment. Let the words settle. Feel the quiet that lives beneath them. And whenever you are ready, we will continue together. There are 3 quiet truths that the Buddhist tradition asks us to sit with. They are not complicated. They are not hidden. They are the kind of truths that, once spoken, you recognize immediately, the way you recognize your own face in still water. And yet we spend most of our lives looking away from them. The first is this: the end of birth is death. The second: the end of all gathering is dispersal. And the third: the end of all meeting is separation. Let those settle for a moment. There is no need to do anything with them. Just let them be here, like 3 stones placed quietly at the edge of a path. Tonight, we are going to sit with these truths together, not because they are heavy, but because, when held gently, they are among the most clarifying and life-giving reflections available to us. The teachers who lived closest to these truths were not somber people. They were, again and again, described as radiant, at ease, full of quiet joy. There is a reason for that, and it is worth discovering. We will start with the third truth, because it is the one closest to everyday life. The end of all meeting is separation. Every person you have ever met, you will one day part from. Every hand you have held will, at some point, let go. Every voice you love will eventually fall silent, or yours will fall silent first. This is not a punishment. It is not a flaw in the design of things. It is simply what it means to live in a world where everything moves. The Buddha once observed that over the course of our many lifetimes, we have shed more tears over separation from those we love than there are waters in all the great oceans. That is a vast image, an ocean of tears. And most of us, if we are honest, can feel the truth of it without needing to believe in many lifetimes. Even in this one life, the losses accumulate. Friends move away. Relationships change shape. Children grow up and walk out into their own lives. The people who raised us grow old. The world rearranges itself, and the arrangements we loved do not survive the rearranging. And yet, knowing this, how do we usually respond? We cling harder. We grip tighter. We try to freeze the relationship in place, to keep it exactly as it is, as though love means preventing change. But the teachings suggest something different, something more tender. What if love does not mean holding on? What if love means holding gently, cherishing what is here while it is here, without demanding that it stay? There is an old teaching that compares this to holding a small bird in your hands. If you grip too tightly, you crush it. If you hold too loosely, it flies away. But if you hold it with just the right tenderness, just the right openness, it rests in your palms freely. It stays not because it is trapped, but because it is safe. This is what the unfrozen mind looks like in relationship. Not cold, not distant, not withdrawn, but soft, open, willing to love fully without demanding that love take any particular shape or last any particular length of time. And here is what is surprising. When we love this way, we actually love more deeply. Because the fear is gone. The clutching is gone. What remains is just the warmth itself, pure and uncomplicated. The kind of warmth that melts ice. Now let us turn to the second truth. The end of all gathering is dispersal. Think of everything you have collected in your life. Not just physical things, though those too, but experiences, achievements, knowledge, skills, reputation, the particular life you have built around yourself like a nest. All of it, every last bit, will eventually come apart. The things you own will pass to others or be forgotten. The reputation you have built will fade. The knowledge you have gathered will become irrelevant or outdated. Even the memories, those most personal of possessions, will soften and blur and eventually dissolve altogether. This is not meant to make you feel hopeless. It is meant to make you feel light. Because if none of it is permanent, if all of it is passing through, then you do not need to carry it so heavily. You do not need to guard it so fiercely. You do not need to define yourself by what you have accumulated or panic when some of it begins to fall away. There is a story from the contemplative traditions about an old teacher who lived very simply in a small dwelling at the edge of a village. He owned almost nothing. A mat to sleep on, a bowl to eat from, a few robes. One day, a visitor arrived and looked around the bare room with concern. "Where are all your things?" the visitor asked. The teacher smiled. "Where are yours?" "Well, I am only passing through," the visitor said. "So am I," the teacher replied. "So am I. We are all passing through." And realizing this does not make life bleak. It makes life vivid. When you know that every experience is temporary, when you really know it in your bones, you start to pay attention. You start to notice the light falling through the window, the taste of simple food, the sound of someone laughing in the next room. These things, which you might otherwise overlook in your rush to accumulate more, become luminous. They become enough. And now, the first truth, the one we look away from most often. The end of birth is death. In many cultures, this reflection is considered strange, even unhealthy. We surround ourselves with distractions to avoid thinking about it. We speak of it in hushed tones, or not at all. We treat it as something that happens to other people, something far away, something for later. But the Buddhist tradition takes a very different view. It considers the reflection on our own mortality to be one of the most important and most kind practices available. Not because it wants us to be afraid, but because it wants us to be awake. When we remember that our time here is limited, we stop wasting it on things that do not matter. We stop postponing the things that do. We hold the people we love a little more tenderly. We forgive a little more easily. We let go of petty grievances and small resentments because we can feel, even faintly, how brief this whole adventure really is. The Zen master Dogen wrote, "Life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly and opportunity is lost. Let us awaken. Do not squander your life." He was not being harsh. He was being compassionate. He was saying, "You have been given this extraordinary gift of being alive. Do not sleepwalk through it. Do not spend it arguing about things that will not matter in a year. Do not spend it accumulating things you cannot keep. Spend it being here. Spend it being kind. Spend it paying attention." Let us explore a story about someone who understood this deeply. There was a writer and naturalist who lived in the countryside, someone who spent his days walking through forests and meadows, studying the rhythms of the seasons, watching the way light moved through the branches of trees. He wrote about nature the way a lover writes about the beloved, with attention, with wonder, with a deep sense of belonging. In his early 40s, he became ill. It was a slow illness, the kind that settles into the body quietly and stays. Over the months and years that followed, he grew weaker. He could not walk as far. He could not stay out as long. His world grew smaller, at least on the outside. But those who visited him during this time found something unexpected. He was not bitter. He was not afraid. He was, by all accounts, as full of life and good cheer as he had ever been. He told his visitors that he enjoyed existing as well as he ever had. He observed, with a kind of gentle wonder, that there was as much comfort in a changed body as in a strong one. The mind, he said, always finds a way to match the condition of the body. When concerned friends and relatives came to him and tried to prepare him for what was ahead, he received them with kindness, but did not share their worry. When a well-meaning family member asked him, with great seriousness, whether he had made peace with the heavens, he looked at her with genuine surprise. "I did not know we had ever quarreled," he said. There is something in that response that is worth sitting with for a long time. I did not know we had ever quarreled. It is the voice of someone who has spent a lifetime paying attention to the natural world, who has seen that birth and passing are not opposites but partners, that the leaf falling from the tree is not a tragedy but a continuation, that the whole of nature is one unbroken, flowing movement, and that we are part of it, all of it, including the part where the body returns to the earth. He passed away peacefully in the springtime, the season of new growth. There is another story from a very different tradition that carries a similar fragrance. A great teacher in one of the Tibetan Buddhist lineages had been ill for some time. His students gathered around him, many of them traveling great distances. The room was filled with love and also with sorrow, because they could see that their beloved teacher was nearing the end of his time in this body. The students wept. Some of them could not look at him without tears. The grief of losing someone who had changed their lives, who had shown them the nature of their own minds, was overwhelming. And the teacher, surrounded by all of this sorrow, looked at them with calm, warm eyes. And he said, very simply, "Do not worry. Nothing happens. Do not worry. Nothing happens." On one level, of course, everything was happening. A body was failing. A life was drawing to a close. Hearts were breaking. But the teacher was pointing to something beneath all of that, something vast and still and untouched by the comings and goings of the surface. He was pointing to what the Buddhist tradition calls the unborn, the dimension of experience that does not come into being and therefore does not pass away. The awareness that holds all of life and all of its changes without itself being changed. We will explore that awareness more deeply in a little while. For now, it is enough to feel the tenderness of the moment. A teacher, in his final days, offering comfort to those who had come to comfort him, reminding them that the deepest truth is not the story on the surface. The deepest truth is the vast, open space in which all stories arise and dissolve. Nothing happens, and everything is held. So what do these three truths ask of us? Not that we become somber, not that we withdraw from the sweetness of life, not that we stop loving or stop gathering or stop meeting. They ask something much simpler. They ask us to hold it all lightly, to enjoy it all fully, and to remember, gently and without fear, that none of it will stay in its present form. The end of all meeting is separation. So meet each other fully, now, while you can. Look into the eyes of the people you love. Listen to them. Be with them. Not someday. Now. The end of all gathering is dispersal. So enjoy what you have, but do not mistake it for who you are. Let things come. Let things go. Travel light. The end of birth is death. So do not waste this life on things that leave the heart cold. Spend it on what matters. Spend it on kindness. Spend it on attention. Spend it on love. A teacher once said that reflecting on these truths is like cleaning a window. You do not change the view outside. You simply remove the dust so you can see clearly what has been there all along. And what has been there all along is this moment. This breath, this warmth, this extraordinary, ordinary, unrepeatable life unfolding right now, right here, in the only place it has ever been. Let us pause here for a moment. Let the body soften. Let the mind be still. And when you feel ready, we will continue gently together. There is a book about the history of the number 0. It traces how this simple, strange idea traveled across centuries and civilizations, how it confused and delighted mathematicians, how it overturned entire systems of thought. The book has a wonderful title. It is called The Nothing That Is. When you look at 0, you see nothing. But look through it, and you see the world. That line has stayed with many who have encountered it, because it points to something that cannot quite be put into words. Something the Buddhist and Zen traditions have been circling for thousands of years. The mind, at its deepest level, is like that 0. When you look for it, you find nothing. No object, no shape, no color, no location. You cannot hold it in your hand or point to it in space. And yet, look through it, and there is the whole world. Every color, every sound, every experience you have ever had has arisen within this nothing. This open, empty, luminous awareness that is always here, always awake, always quietly doing its work. Tonight, let us rest in that discovery together. Not as something to understand with the mind, but as something to feel, the way you feel, the warmth of sunlight on your face without needing to understand the physics of light. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a word for this discovery. It is called bodhicitta. It is a word from the ancient Pali and Sanskrit languages, and it means, simply, the awakened heart. Now, the word awakened can sound very grand. It can sound like something reserved for monks on mountain tops or saints in ancient texts. But the tradition insists, again and again, that this awakened heart is not something extraordinary. It is not something you need to earn or achieve or travel far to find. It is the most ordinary thing in the world. It is what you already are, beneath the noise. Bodhicitta has two faces, the tradition tells us. Two expressions of the same thing. The first face is compassion. When the heart sees clearly, when it is not clouded by fear or grasping or confusion, what naturally arises is a warmth toward others. A simple, uncomplicated wish for beings to be well. Not a grand project to save the world, but something much quieter than that. The way you might instinctively reach out to steady a child who is about to stumble. The way your heart softens when you see someone struggling. That natural, unforced tenderness. That is the first face of the awakened heart. The second face is harder to describe because it is not really a thing at all. It is awareness itself, the knowing quality of the mind. The fact that experience is happening and something is aware of it. Let us sit with that for a moment, because it is simpler than it sounds. Right now, as you listen to these words, something is aware that you are listening. You do not have to make it happen. You do not have to concentrate or strain or try. The awareness is already here. It was here before you started listening. It will be here after you stop. It is here when you are happy and when you are sad. It is here when the mind is busy and when the mind is still. There is a simple way to notice this. Listen to the sounds around you, whatever they are. The hum of a fan, a car passing outside, the wind, silence itself, whatever is present. Now notice, did you have to do anything to hear those sounds? Did you have to build the awareness, or turn it on, or create it from scratch? Or was it simply already here, open and ready, receiving whatever arose? This is what the tradition calls the innate wakefulness of mind. It is not something you practice your way into. It is something you relax your way into noticing. It has been here all along, the way the sky has been here all along, even when it was hidden by clouds. There is a moment that many meditators describe, a moment that can happen in formal practice or in the middle of an ordinary day. It is the moment when you suddenly notice that you have been aware this whole time, not aware of anything in particular, just aware. It is like waking up inside a dream and realizing you were already awake, or like searching the house for your glasses and then finding them on your face. The Buddha gave one of his simplest and most direct instructions about this. He said, "Let go of the past. Let go of the future. Let go of the present. And cross over to the further shore." The further shore. It sounds far away. It sounds like something at the end of a long and difficult journey. But the beauty of this teaching is that the further shore is not distant at all. It is right here. It is this very mind, in this very moment, when it is not grasping at anything. Let go of the past. That does not mean forget the past. It means stop reaching back for it. Stop replaying it. Stop trying to fix it or relive it. Let it rest. Let go of the future. That does not mean stop planning or caring about what comes next. It means stop leaning into it right now. Stop living in anticipation. Let it come when it comes. Let go of the present. This is the most surprising part. Even the present moment, when we grip it, when we try to hold it still and make it stay, becomes a form of clinging. Let even this go. Let the moment flow. And what remains? What is left when you are not holding on to anything at all? The tradition says, what remains is the further shore. Not a place. Not an experience. Just this. Open, spacious, aware. The nothing that is. Let us explore a story about this. In a monastery in the mountains, a young student had been meditating earnestly for many months. She sat for long hours each day. She followed the instructions carefully. She watched the breath. She noted the sensations. She observed the thoughts. She was diligent and sincere, but something was bothering her. She felt that she was always almost there, almost at the place her teachers described, almost tasting the freedom they pointed to, but never quite arriving. One afternoon, she went to see the elder teacher of the monastery. She sat down and described her frustration. "I feel like I am always reaching," she said, "always striving, like the thing I am looking for is just one more step ahead. But when I take that step, it moves. It is always one more step." The teacher listened quietly. Then she said, "What are you looking for?" "Peace," the student said. "Freedom." The awareness the teachings describe. "And where are you looking for it?" "In my meditation. In the next moment. In a deeper experience." The teacher smiled. "And what is aware of all this reaching? What is aware of the frustration? What is listening to me right now?" The student paused. She opened her mouth to answer, and then she stopped. Because in that pause, something very subtle happened. The reaching stopped. The striving relaxed. And what was left was just this. Just sitting in a room. Just hearing a voice. Just the quiet, effortless hum of awareness which had been there the whole time, patiently waiting for her to stop looking past it. "Oh," she said softly. The teacher nodded. "It is already here," she said. "It is already here." This is one of the most comforting and most radical things the contemplative traditions have to offer. The peace you are looking for is not at the end of a long road. It is not in the next retreat, or the next book, or the next moment. It is the very awareness in which all those moments arise. You cannot find it by searching, because the searching takes you away from it. You cannot create it by effort, because the effort obscures it. You can only notice it by relaxing, by softening, by letting the grasping hands open, and discovering that what you were looking for was resting in your palms the whole time. A Tibetan teacher once described it this way. He said, "When you recognize the empty, selfless nature of things, the energy to bring about the good of others dawns naturally and without effort." This is the connection between the two faces of bodhicitta. When awareness recognizes itself, when the mind stops grasping and simply rests in its own open nature, compassion arises on its own. Not as a duty, not as an obligation, but as the natural warmth of a mind that is no longer contracted around itself. Think of it this way. When water is frozen into ice, it cannot flow. It cannot nourish. It cannot find its way to the places that need it. But when the ice melts, the water moves effortlessly. It flows downhill toward the valley. It seeps into the earth. It finds the roots. It feeds the river. It does not need to be told where to go. Its nature is to flow, and when the freezing stops, it simply does what water does. Compassion is like that. It is not something we need to manufacture. It is something we need to stop blocking. When the mind unfreezes, when it lets go of its fixations and its fears and its tightly held opinions about how things should be, what naturally flows out is kindness, care, the simple, uncomplicated wish for others to be well. There is a beautiful practice that some of the traditions recommend, not as a technique, but as a way of framing the day. At the beginning of a period of rest or meditation, or simply at the start of the morning, you might offer a quiet aspiration. Something like, "May this time be of benefit. May whatever arises here serve the welfare of all beings. You do not have to believe that your quiet moment of rest is literally saving the world. That is not the point. The point is the orientation. The point is that you are turning the heart outward, even slightly, even gently, so that your peace is not just for you. It is connected to something larger. It is a small offering made to the whole. And at the end of the day, or the end of a sitting, or the end of a walk, you might offer another quiet thought. May whatever goodness arose here be shared. May it ripple outward in ways I cannot see. This is the seed of bodhicitta. It is very humble. It is very small. It does not ask much of you. But seeds, as we know, have a way of growing into things far larger than themselves. There is a line from a writer who loved the natural world, who spent his life watching seeds become forests and small streams become rivers. He wrote, "Though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders. Great faith in a seed." That is what this path asks of us. Not grand gestures, not dramatic transformations, just the willingness to plant something small and true, and to water it with attention, and to trust that it knows how to grow. The seed is already in you. It has always been in you. It is the quiet awareness that is listening right now. It is the warmth that arises when you think of someone you love. It is the peace that comes in those brief, unguarded moments when the mind forgets to grasp and simply rests. You do not need to create it. You only need to stop covering it up. Let the soil be soft. Let the water find the root. Let the light come in, the nothing that is, the zero through which the whole world shines. It has been here all along, patient and luminous, waiting for you to stop searching and simply look. Let us pause here for a moment. There is no rush. Let the quiet hold you, and when you feel ready, we will walk the last stretch of this path together. There is an old Zen saying, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind there are few." We have been exploring, together, the art of letting go. Letting go of the need for things to stay the same. Letting go of the habit of reaching for the next moment. Letting go of the stories the mind tells about what is real and what is solid. And, most tenderly, letting go of the people and things we love, not by pushing them away, but by holding them with open hands. But there is a quieter kind of holding on that we have not yet looked at. It does not announce itself the way desire does, or grief, or fear. It operates in the background, so familiar that we barely notice it. And yet it may be the most persistent form of clinging we carry. It is our attachment to our own opinions, to being right, to the sense that we know how things are and that our way of seeing is the correct one. Let us be honest with ourselves for a moment, gently and with a sense of humor. We have opinions about everything, about the right way to raise children, about the right way to eat, about what kind of music is good and what kind is not, about politics, about religion, about the neighbor's garden, about the weather, about the way other people drive. We have opinions about things we know deeply and things we know almost nothing about. We have opinions about places we have never visited, foods we have never tasted, people we have never met. The mind is an opinion-generating machine, and it runs constantly, producing views and judgments and positions on every conceivable subject, often before we have even been asked. And there is nothing wrong with that. Opinions are natural. They are part of how the mind makes sense of the world. The problem is not that we have opinions. The problem is that we become them. Have you ever noticed what happens in the body when someone disagrees with you? Not about something important, just about something small. The best route to take on a drive. Whether a film was good. How long to cook rice. There is a tightening. A contraction. Sometimes it is in the chest. Sometimes in the jaw. Sometimes in the belly. The body stiffens as if preparing for something. And the mind begins to build its case. Marshalling evidence, forming arguments, preparing for the defense of a position that 5 minutes ago you did not even know you held. This is ice forming in real time. This is the mind freezing around a thought and saying, "This is mine. This is me. I will not let it go." A great Zen teacher captured this perfectly. He said, simply, "Don't side with yourself. Don't side with yourself." It is such unusual advice. Everything in our culture tells us the opposite. Stand your ground. Know what you believe. Defend your position. Be confident in your views. And those things have their place. There are moments when clarity and conviction matter deeply. There are principles worth standing for. Kindness, honesty, the welfare of others. But the teacher was pointing to something more subtle. He was pointing to the reflex, the automatic, unexamined habit of assuming that our perspective is the right one simply because it is ours. Think about how strange that is when you really look at it. We trust our opinions not because we have carefully examined them, not because we have weighed all the evidence, but because they are ours. They arose in our mind, and so they must be correct. That is not wisdom. That is loyalty to a thought. And it creates so much unnecessary friction. So many arguments that did not need to happen. So many resentments that grew from nothing more than two people, each convinced that their version of reality was the real one, neither willing to soften, neither willing to say those most liberating of words, "I might be wrong." Let us explore a story about this. Two monks were walking along a country road after a heavy rain. The fields on either side were flooded, and the road itself was thick with mud. As they approached a crossroads, they came upon a woman standing at the edge of a deep puddle. She was dressed in fine clothes and looked distressed. There was no way across without ruining her garments. Without a word, the older monk walked over, lifted her up, and carried her across the mud. He set her down on the dry ground on the other side. She thanked him and went on her way, and the two monks continued walking. They walked in silence for a long time. An hour, then two. The younger monk's face grew darker and darker. Finally, he could not contain himself any longer. "How could you do that?" he burst out. "We are monks. We have taken vows. We are not supposed to touch a woman. How could you pick her up like that?" The older monk looked at him calmly. "I set her down 2 hours ago," he said. "Why are you still carrying her? Why are you still carrying her?" It is such a clear mirror to hold up to ourselves. How often do we carry things long after the moment has passed? Not physical things, but mental things. Opinions about what should have happened. Judgments about what someone else did wrong. Replays of conversations, rewriting them so that we come out on top. Grievances polished and preserved like objects on a shelf. The older monk did something simple. He saw a need, he responded, and then he let it go. The whole thing took perhaps 30 seconds of his life. But the younger monk turned it into hours of suffering, not because of what happened, but because of his opinion about what happened. His attachment to being right, his certainty that his view of the rules was the correct one. And notice, the younger monk was not wrong. Exactly. There was a rule. The older monk did something unconventional. But the younger monk's suffering did not come from the situation. It came from his inability to let it go. It came from siding with himself. There is an even deeper layer to this, and it is worth approaching softly, because it touches on something very close to the heart. Beneath all our opinions, beneath all our views and judgments and positions, there is a more fundamental attachment. It is the attachment to the one who holds the opinions. The attachment to I. We take it so completely for granted that there is a solid, continuous self at the center of our experience. Someone who is thinking these thoughts. Someone who is having these feelings. Someone who was born on a particular day and has lived a particular life and will continue, more or less the same, into the future. But the Buddhist teachings, with great gentleness, ask us to look more carefully. What is this I? Where does it live? If you look for it, what do you find? You might say, I am my body, but the body changes constantly. The body you have now is not the body you had as a child. Every cell has been replaced, some of them many times over. If you are your body, which body are you? You might say, I am my thoughts, but thoughts come and go like clouds. You did not have this thought 5 minutes ago. You will not have it 5 minutes from now. If you are your thoughts, which thought are you? You might say, I am my memories, but memories shift and fade and rearrange themselves. Two people who shared the same experience will remember it differently. If you are your memories, which version are you? The more closely you look, the more the solid sense of I begins to soften. Not disappear, but soften. Like ice meeting warm water. What seemed like a fixed, permanent thing reveals itself as a process, a flow, a constantly changing stream of experiences that the mind gathers together and labels me. And this is not frightening. It is freeing. Because if the I is not as solid as it seemed, then all the things that cause the I to suffer, the wounded pride, the need to be right, the fear of being wrong, the endless comparison with others, all of these also become lighter, less solid, less imprisoning. The Buddha said, there is no self to be found in any of the elements of experience. When you see this clearly, the heart is released. Let us come back to something gentler now. You do not need to dismantle your sense of self. You do not need to become nobody. That is not what the teachings are asking. They are asking something much more modest and much more kind. Can you hold the sense of I lightly? The way you might hold an opinion lightly, not as the absolute truth of who you are, but as a useful story, a convenient summary, a name given to something that is actually much more fluid and mysterious and beautiful than any name could capture. There is a story about a teacher who was asked by a student, "Who are you?" The teacher thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "Today? I am not sure. Ask me again tomorrow. I may be someone different." It was not a flippant answer. It was a deeply honest one. Because in truth, We are someone different every day, every hour, every breath. The I of this morning is not quite the same as the I of this evening, and both of them are already fading into the past. When we hold this lightly, when we wear the self like a loose garment rather than a suit of armor, something opens up. There is more room to breathe, more room to be surprised, more room to meet each moment freshly, without the heavy baggage of who we think we are and what we think we know. This is once again the unfrozen mind. Not clinging to opinions, not clinging to being right, not even clinging to the one who has the opinions. Just this open, spacious awareness, meeting what comes with curiosity and kindness, willing to be changed by what it sees. A Zen teacher was once giving a talk to a group of students. In the middle of the talk, he held up an orange. "What is this?" he asked. "An orange," the students said. "Are you sure?" The students looked at each other, uncertain. The teacher peeled the orange slowly. He separated it into segments. He placed one segment on his tongue and closed his eyes. After a long pause, he said, "Do not be so sure you know what things are. The moment you are certain, you have stopped looking. And when you stop looking, you stop seeing. And when you stop seeing, you are asleep." He offered the remaining segments to the students. "Taste it," he said. "Taste it as if you have never tasted anything before. That is the invitation of the beginner's mind. Not to know less, but to hold what we know more loosely. To leave room for the world to show us something new. To let go of the need to be the expert, the one who has it all figured out, and instead to approach each moment with the quiet wonder of someone who has just arrived. Don't side with yourself, not because you are wrong, but because siding is a kind of freezing. And tonight, we are learning to let the mind be water. Let us pause for a moment here. Let the mind rest from all these thoughts. Feel the quiet beneath the words. And when you are ready, we will walk together into the final stretch of tonight's journey. We have come a long way together tonight. Through stories and silence, through questions and quiet truths. We have looked at the nature of change and the habit of reaching. We have peered beneath the surface of what seems solid and found it shimmering. We have sat with the tender facts of separation and loss. We have discovered that the awareness we were searching for was never missing. And we have practiced, gently, the art of not siding with ourselves. Now, as we approach the end of this journey, let us return to the image we began with. The one that has been waiting for us, patiently, all evening. Ice and water. In the contemplative traditions, this image is used to describe the entire journey from confusion to clarity, from suffering to peace. And its beauty lies in its simplicity. Ice is hard. It is rigid. It holds a fixed shape. If you press against it, it resists. If you try to pour it, it will not flow. It is locked in place, solid and unyielding. In this image, ice represents the mind that clings, the mind that grips an experience and will not let it go. The mind that freezes around a thought, a feeling, a desire, a fear, and holds it in place, even when holding it causes pain. We have all felt this. The tightness in the chest when we are angry and will not let the anger pass. The heaviness of a worry that we turn over and over, as if examining it one more time might finally resolve it. The ache of wanting something we cannot have, or wanting something we already have to never change. That is ice. It is the mind contracted around itself, hard and cold and stuck. Water, on the other hand, is soft. It moves. It flows around obstacles rather than pushing against them. It takes the shape of whatever container holds it, and when there is no container, it spreads out freely in every direction. It finds the lowest ground without effort. It nourishes whatever it touches. Water represents the mind that has let go. Not a mind that does not care, not a mind that has gone numb, but a mind that is fully alive and fully responsive, precisely because it is not frozen in place. It meets each moment as it comes. It adjusts, it adapts, it flows. It does not resist the shape of things. It does not demand that reality conform to its preferences. And here is the part that changes everything, the part that makes this image so full of hope. Water is not a different substance from ice. It is the same substance, the same mind. The only difference is that the freezing has stopped. Think about what that means for a moment. Freedom is not something you have to go out and find. It is not waiting for you at the end of a long journey. It is not something that belongs to the saints and the sages and not to you. Freedom is this very mind, the one you are using right now to listen to these words, unfrozen, unsoftened, released from its grip. You have already tasted this. You may not have called it freedom. You may not have recognized it, but you have tasted it. Think of a moment when you were laughing so freely that you forgot yourself entirely. Think of a moment when you were so absorbed in something beautiful, a piece of music, a landscape, the face of someone you love, that the usual chatter of the mind simply stopped. Think of a moment when something worried you for days, and then one morning you woke up and the worry was gone, and there was just the morning, just the light, just the simple fact of being alive. In each of those moments, the ice melted, just for a little while, just enough for the water to flow, and it felt like relief. It felt like coming home. That is not a special state. That is your natural state. The freezing is the addition. The clinging is the extra effort. The water was always there, underneath. But let us be honest with ourselves, kindly, as always. The ice reforms. It reforms constantly. This is not a failure. This is simply the nature of having a mind that has spent many years in the habit of grasping. Let us explore a story that illustrates this with warmth and humor. There was a revered teacher, widely known for his wisdom and compassion, who was visiting a large city for a series of talks. Each day, he was driven along a busy road lined with shops. The shop windows were full of gleaming objects, devices, and gadgets, many of them new, many of them unfamiliar to him. He was not a man who owned many things. He lived simply. His needs were few. He had spent decades training the mind in the art of letting go. And yet, at the end of the week, he turned to his companions with a sheepish smile and confessed something. Every day, he said, I looked into those windows, and by the end of the week, I found myself wanting things I did not even recognize. I did not know what they were or what they did. And still, the wanting arose. His companions laughed, and he laughed with them, because the confession was not a defeat. It was a teaching. He was showing them, with his own experience, how deep and how persistent the habit of wanting is. It lives in all of us. Even in those who have practiced for a lifetime, The difference is not that the wanting disappears. The difference is that you see it. You see it arise, and you smile at it, and you do not follow it. You do not freeze around it. You let it come, and you let it go, the way you might watch a leaf drift past on a stream. That is the practice, not perfection, not the elimination of desire, just this gentle, continuous noticing, this ongoing willingness to let the ice melt again and again, as many times as it forms. Now, there is a subtlety here that is worth mentioning because it catches many of us. Sometimes the ice looks like water. Sometimes we think we have let go, but what has actually happened is that we have traded one form of clinging for another. The tradition has a playful word for this. It calls it slush. Slush is what happens when we become attached to the experience of letting go, when we cling to calm, when we grasp at peace, when we taste the spacious, open quality of awareness and then immediately freeze around it, trying to hold it in place, trying to make it stay. I had such a beautiful meditation yesterday. Why can I not get back to that? That is slush. The ice has partially melted, but it has not quite let go. There is still a hand reaching, still a grip tightening, still a self at the center saying, "This is mine. I want to keep this." Even awareness itself can become something we cling to. We begin to taste the open, luminous quality of mind, and we think, "This is it. I have found it." And in that very moment of claiming it, we have frozen again. Subtly, almost imperceptibly, but frozen nonetheless. The path is not about arriving at a permanent state of openness. It is about the continuous, gentle willingness to notice when the freezing has happened and to allow the warmth back in. Again, and again, and again. Without judgment, without frustration, with the same patience we might bring to watching snow melt on a spring afternoon. Let us explore a story about this. A student had been practicing at a small monastery for several years. She was earnest and devoted. Over time, her meditation had deepened considerably, and she had begun to experience periods of great stillness, a quiet, luminous calm that would settle over the mind like moonlight on still water. She treasured these experiences. She began to arrange her days around them. She would eat lightly before sitting, so the body would not be heavy. She would choose the quietest corner of the meditation hall. She would sit at the same time each evening when the monastery was most still. She was building, without realizing it, a careful little fortress around her peace. One morning, she went to see her teacher. She was glowing. "Something wonderful is happening," she said. "The mind has become so still, so clear. It is like looking into a pool of water with no ripples at all." The teacher listened and nodded. "And how do you feel about that?" he asked. "I love it," she said. "I want it to continue. I am afraid of losing it." The teacher was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, very gently, "That is the ice forming again." She looked at him, confused. "But it feels like freedom," she said. "It feels like freedom," he agreed. "But listen to your own words. I love it. I want it to continue. I am afraid of losing it." That is 3 layers of clinging wrapped around a beautiful experience. The experience itself is fine. It is the wrapping that is the problem. She sat with this for a long time. It was uncomfortable because she could feel the truth of it. The peace she had found was real. But the way she was holding it was not peaceful at all. She was gripping it the way a child grips a favorite toy, afraid someone will take it away. "So, what do I do?" she asked. The teacher smiled. "Enjoy the still water," he said. "But do not try to stop the wind. Do not try to stop the wind. Let the ripples come. Let the stillness come. Let whatever comes come. And let whatever goes go. That is water. That is the unfrozen mind. Not a mind that has achieved permanent calm, but a mind that does not cling to calm when it arrives or push away restlessness when it returns." So how do we live this way? How do we keep the melting going? There are two simple reminders that have helped many practitioners over the years. They are not techniques exactly. They are more like whispered invitations offered from the heart of the tradition to anyone who is willing to hear them. The first is this: it is already here. Not tomorrow. Not at the end of a retreat. Not when you have finally sorted out your life or solved your problems or become a better person. It is already here. The open, flowing, unfrozen awareness that you are looking for is present right now, in this very moment, as the background to everything you are experiencing. When you feel yourself striving, reaching, leaning forward into the next experience, as if freedom is just around the corner, pause and remind yourself it is already here. And in that pause, you may feel a settling, a softening, a quiet arrival in the place you never actually left. The second reminder is a little unusual. The phrasing is odd, but stay with it, because it is pointing to something important. It does not matter to what you do not cling. Read that again, slowly, in your mind. It does not matter to what you do not cling. What this means is that freedom is not about finding the right experience to let go of. It is not about identifying the one attachment that is keeping you stuck and heroically releasing it. Freedom is simply the absence of clinging. Any clinging. All clinging. And since the nature of the mind is already open, already aware, already free, the only thing required is to stop adding the clinging. Not to do something, to stop doing something. It is like asking, how do I make this ice into water? And the answer is, stop keeping it cold. The water is already there. Just let the warmth in. If freedom is the mind without clinging, then why not simply not cling right now? Not tomorrow. Not after more practice. Now, it is always available. It is always immediate. It does not require preparation. It does not require permission. It is the most natural thing in the world. It is, in fact, what the mind does when it is left alone, when nothing is added, when the habits of grasping are, even for a moment, laid down. And when the ice does melt, something happens that we have touched on before, but that deserves to be said once more as we come to the close of our journey. When the mind unfreezes, compassion flows. This is not a separate step. It is not something we have to cultivate on top of letting go. It is the natural result, the inevitable consequence. When the water is free, it moves. It flows toward what is dry. It nourishes what is thirsty. It does this not because someone told it to, but because that is the nature of water. When the mind stops clinging to itself, it naturally opens toward others. The warmth that was trapped inside the ice radiates outward. The kindness that was frozen under layers of self-concern begins to move. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, just quietly, the way dawn arrives, gradually, and then all at once. A teacher once put it this way: when you recognize the empty, selfless nature of things, the energy to bring about the good of others dawns naturally and without effort. Naturally, without effort. That is the key. We do not need to force ourselves to be compassionate. We need to melt the ice that is blocking the compassion that is already there. Let us explore one last story together. There was an old woman who lived alone at the edge of a village. She was not a teacher. She had no students. She had never been to a monastery or read the ancient texts. She spent her days tending a small garden and cooking simple meals, and sitting on her porch in the evenings, watching the sky change color. The people of the village regarded her with a kind of puzzled affection. She was always calm, always kind. When neighbors came to her with their troubles, she listened fully, without rushing, without offering advice unless it was asked for. When children played too roughly near her garden and trampled her flowers, she would look at the broken stems and say, "Well, they will grow again." When the rains came and flooded her kitchen, she mopped the floor and said, "The floor needed washing anyway." One day, a young man from the village came to see her. He had been going through a difficult time. He sat on her porch and told her about his struggles, his frustrations, his feeling that life was unfair, and that he could not seem to get ahead no matter how hard he tried. The old woman listened. When he was finished, she was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Would you like some tea?" He nodded, a little confused. She went inside and returned with 2 cups. They sat and drank in silence for a few minutes. The evening was warm. Crickets were beginning to sing. "How do you do it?" the young man finally asked. "How are you always so peaceful? Do you not struggle with things? Do you not worry?" The old woman thought about this. "I used to hold on to everything," she said. "Every worry, every slight, every disappointment. I held them all very tightly, as if letting go of them would mean letting go of myself." "What changed?" he asked. She looked out at her garden, at the flowers bending gently in the breeze. "I got tired," she said, and she laughed softly. "I simply got tired of carrying it all. And one day I put it down. Not all at once. A little at a time. One worry, then another. One old resentment, then another. And each time I set something down, I noticed that my hands were a little more free. And with free hands, I found I could do things I could not do before. I could tend the garden. I could hold a cup of tea. I could reach out to a neighbor." She looked at him kindly. "That is all it is," she said. "Putting things down so your hands are free." The young man sat with this for a long time. And something in him, something tight and tired and old, began, very quietly, to soften. So here we are, at the end of the path, which is also the beginning. Because this is not the kind of journey that has a finish line. It is the kind that circles back gently to where it started. Each time we walk it, we see something new. Each time the ice melts, it melts a little deeper. Each time we notice the clinging and let it go, the letting go comes a little more easily. We started this evening with a simple image: ice and water, the same substance, separated only by warmth. And we have seen, through stories and teachings and quiet reflection, that this image holds the whole of the path within it. The mind freezes. This is not a problem. This is just what minds do. The mind melts. This is not an achievement. This is just what happens when we stop holding on. And in the melting, something beautiful is revealed. Not something new, something that was always there. The open, flowing, tender awareness that is our deepest nature. The warmth that connects us to each other and to all living things. The peace that does not depend on circumstances. The freedom that is not found at the end of the road, but in the willingness to let go of the road altogether and simply be here. It is already here. It has always been here. And tonight, perhaps, you have felt it, even briefly, even faintly, a thawing, a softening, a quiet warmth somewhere deep inside, like the first trickle of snowmelt finding its way down a mountainside in spring. That is enough. That is more than enough. That is the seed, and the seed knows how to grow. Let us rest here now. Let the body be at ease. Let the mind be still, or let it move. It does not matter. You are the water, not the ice. You have always been the water. And when you are ready, we will close our time together. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your willingness to sit with these old, quiet teachings, to let them wash over you like warm water, to receive them not with the head but with the heart. We have traveled a gentle road together. We have looked at change and found it was not something to fear, but something to rest inside of. We have seen through the stories the mind tells and discovered that the world is lighter than it appears. We have sat with the tender truths of separation and loss and found that they open, rather than close, the heart. We have looked for awareness and found that it was already here, patient and luminous, asking nothing of us but that we stop searching. And we have held up this simple image, ice and water, the mind that clings and the mind that flows, the same mind, the same heart, separated only by warmth. You do not need to remember everything from tonight. You do not need to practice anything perfectly. The teachings are not tasks. They are invitations, and they will be here whenever you want to return to them, as steady and as patient as the breath itself. For now, let the body rest. Let the mind drift. Let whatever remains of the ice continue its slow, quiet melting. There is no rush. The water knows the way. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk. Tonight, we embark on a gentle journey into one of life's most profound questions. Not the kind of question that keeps you awake at night, but the kind that, when understood, finally allows you to find deep, meaningful rest. What is the real purpose of life? Society tells us it's happiness, success, achievement, the accumulation of experiences and possessions that make us feel complete. But what if everything we've been taught about life's purpose is backwards? We'll explore ancient Zen wisdom that reveals a truth so simple, so elegant, that once you see it, you can never unsee it. This isn't about changing your entire life. It's about changing how you see the life you already have. Find a comfortable position. Let your body settle into the surface that supports you. Take a slow breath in, and as you breathe out, Let go of the day that has passed. Whatever happened today, whatever you accomplished or didn't accomplish, simply let it be. In old Japan, there lived a merchant named Kenji. By every measure of his society, he was successful. His tea shop in Kyoto was the most prosperous in the district. People came from neighboring towns to buy his rare teas. His home was filled with beautiful things. His family was well fed and respected. Yet every night, as Kenji lay on his silk futon, a strange emptiness would settle over him like morning mist. He would think of all he had achieved, and somehow it felt like nothing at all. The taste of success had become as bland as yesterday's rice. One evening, feeling particularly restless, Kenji decided to take a walk through the bamboo forest near his home. The moon was full, casting silver shadows between the tall stalks. As he walked, he heard the soft sound of someone weeping. Following the sound, he found an old Zen monk sitting beside a small stream. The monk's robe was patched and simple, his begging bowl beside him empty. Yet his tears were not tears of sorrow, but something Kenji had never seen before. They seemed to shimmer with a strange kind of joy. "Master," Kenji said gently, "why do you weep?" The old monk looked up with eyes that held the depth of still water. "I weep because I have everything," he said. "And you, successful merchant, why do you suffer?" Kenji was taken aback. "I don't suffer, master. I have a prosperous business, a fine home, everything a man could want." The monk smiled. "Then why did the emptiness in your chest bring you to the forest tonight?" Kenji felt something turn over in his heart. How could this stranger see what he had hidden even from himself? "Sit," the monk said, patting the moss beside him. "Let me tell you about the two kinds of thirst. As you listen to this story, let your own body sink a little deeper. Feel the weight of your limbs. Notice how your breath moves in and out without any effort from you. Just like Kenji, you may have spent years running towards something, not knowing what you were really seeking." The monk's voice was soft like wind through bamboo. "There is the thirst of the body," he began, "and the thirst of the heart. When your body thirsts for water, you drink, and the thirst is satisfied. Simple. But the heart's thirst is different. The more you drink what the world offers, the thirstier you become." Kenji frowned. "I don't understand." "You achieved success to fill an emptiness. Did the emptiness disappear?" "No," Kenji admitted. "It only grew larger. This is because you were trying to fill a hole that can never be filled from the outside. The harder you try, the bigger it gets. Like trying to satisfy hunger by looking at paintings of food." The monk picked up a smooth stone from beside the stream and held it up in the moonlight. "What do you see?" "A stone," Kenji replied. "Look closer." Kenji leaned in. The stone was ordinary grey granite, worn smooth by water. "I see a stone," he repeated. "Look with your heart, not your eyes." Kenji stared at the stone, and something strange began to happen. The longer he looked without trying to understand or categorize or judge, the more the stone seemed to glow. Not with light, but with a presence he had never noticed before. It was perfect, exactly as it was. Complete. Lacking nothing. "Now," the monk said softly, "you are beginning to see what you really are. Let your eyes close now if they haven't already." Feel the rhythm of your breathing. In this moment, you lack nothing. You are not incomplete. You are not broken. This is what the merchant was beginning to understand. The monk continued. The real purpose of life is not to get something you don't have. It's to realize what you already are. Most people spend their whole lives chasing shadows, never knowing they are already the light. But how can that be? Kenji asked. I feel so empty, so restless. Because you have been taught to look everywhere except where the treasure is hidden. It's like a fish asking where the ocean is. There's an old Zen story about a master and student that illustrates this perfectly. Let this story wash over you like gentle waves. A young monk named Iho was desperate to find enlightenment. He meditated until his legs went numb. He studied texts until his eyes burned. He traveled from temple to temple, seeking the perfect teacher who would finally give him what he lacked. One winter day, he arrived at a small temple where an ancient master lived alone. The master was in his garden, slowly raking fallen leaves. "Master," Eijo said, bowing deeply, "I have come to receive your wisdom. Please teach me the secret of enlightenment." The old master continued raking without looking up. "I'm busy," he said simply. Eijo waited. Hours passed. The master finished raking, then began again in a different pattern. The sun moved across the sky. Finally, as twilight approached, Eijo could contain himself no longer. "Master, I have waited all day. When will you teach me?" The master stopped and looked at him with eyes like autumn leaves. "I have been teaching you all day." "I don't understand." "You've done nothing but rake leaves." The master smiled. "And what were you doing while I raked?" "Waiting," Eijo said, frustrated. "And what were you waiting for?" "For you to give me enlightenment." "Ah," the master said, setting down his rake. "And while you were waiting for something you didn't have, what happened to this moment?" Eijo opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He realized he had been so focused on the future teaching that he had completely missed the teaching happening right in front of him. The master's presence. The falling leaves. The sound of the rake on stone. The feeling of cold air on his face. "Master," Eijo whispered, "I have been so busy looking for the moon that I missed the finger pointing at it." "Not quite," the master said gently. "You have been so busy looking for the moon that you missed that you are the moon. Feel your breath moving in and out. You are not breathing to get somewhere else. You are not breathing to become someone different. You are breathing because you are alive, and that aliveness is enough. It has always been enough." Back by the stream, the merchant Kenji sat in silence as these words settled into his heart like seeds in fertile soil. The monk's presence beside him was like sitting next to a warm fire on a cold night. Not because the monk was doing anything special, but because he had stopped doing anything unnecessary. "Master," Kenji said finally, "if what you say is true, why do I feel so driven to achieve, to acquire, to become more than I am?" The monk chuckled, a sound like water over stones. "Because no one ever told you that you were already complete. From the time you were small, you were taught that you were lacking something, that you needed to earn your worth. That happiness was somewhere else, with someone else, in some other moment." He gestured to the flowing stream beside them. Does this water try to become wetter? Does it struggle to flow downhill? Does it suffer because it's not tea or wine? No, Kenji said. It simply flows according to its nature. And in that flowing, it finds perfect expression. This is what the sages call wu-wei, effortless action, not trying to be anything other than what you are. The moon had climbed higher, casting everything in silver light. Kenji felt something in his chest beginning to loosen, like a fist that had been clenched for so long he'd forgotten it could open. But my business, my responsibilities, Kenji said. Should I abandon everything? Why would you abandon anything? The monk asked. The stream doesn't abandon being water when it becomes a river. Your work can become an expression of your true nature rather than a desperate attempt to prove your worth. He picked up his empty begging bowl and held it up. This bowl is most useful when it's empty. Not because emptiness is better than fullness, but because only an empty bowl can be filled. Only an empty mind can receive wisdom. Only an empty heart can be flooded with love. As you rest here now, notice the space between your thoughts. That space is not empty in the way we usually think of emptiness. It's full of potential, full of peace, full of the awareness that notices everything without being disturbed by anything. The monk stood slowly, his movements like flowing water. Come, he said to Kenji. Let me show you something. They walked deeper into the bamboo forest until they came to a small clearing where the moonlight fell unobstructed. In the center of the clearing was a large boulder, split perfectly down the middle by some ancient force. What do you see? The monk asked. Kenji looked at the broken rock. A boulder that's been damaged, split in two. Look again, the monk said. This time, don't look with your ideas about how things should be. Kenji stared at the split boulder. Slowly, his perception began to shift. Instead of seeing a broken thing, he began to see the perfect expression of the forces that had shaped it. The way the moonlight fell into the crack, illuminating the crystal formations inside. The small ferns that had made their home in the crevice. The way the two halves leaned toward each other like old friends. It's not broken, Kenji whispered. It's complete exactly as it is. Yes, the monk said. And so are you. So is everyone. The crack in your heart that you've been trying to heal isn't damage. It's where the light gets in. This is the first great understanding that Zen offers us about life's real purpose. We are not broken beings trying to become whole. We are not incomplete beings trying to find our missing pieces. We are expressions of life itself, perfect in our imperfection, complete in our incompleteness. Feel this truth settling into your body now. You don't need to understand it with your mind. Let your heart receive it. You are enough. You have always been enough. The purpose of life is not to become something you're not. It's to realize what you've always been. The merchant Kenji walked back through the forest that night with lighter steps than he'd taken in years. Not because his circumstances had changed, but because his relationship to his circumstances had transformed. The emptiness in his chest was still there, but now he understood it differently. It wasn't a lack to be filled. It was space for life to move through him. The next morning, he returned to his tea shop with new eyes. His customers looked different to him now. Not as sources of profit, but as fellow travelers, each carrying their own hidden wholeness. His work felt different too. Not like a burden to prove his worth, but like a dance he was invited to join. Nothing had changed, and everything had changed. This is what happens when we stop asking life to make us happy and start asking what life wants to express through us. When we stop trying to get something from existence and start wondering what we can give back. When we realize that the purpose of life is not to satisfy the small self that always wants more, but to discover the vast self that lacks nothing. Let your breathing slow down even more now. Feel yourself sinking deeper into rest. The questions that drove you to seek happiness, success, achievement, these questions came from love. A love for life, a love for growth, a love for experiencing all that existence offers. This love doesn't need to be abandoned. It just needs to be redirected. Instead of asking, "How can I be happy?" we can ask, "How can I be awake?" Instead of asking, "How can I get what I want?" we can ask, "How can I want what is?" Instead of asking, "How can I become someone special?" we can ask, "How can I express what I already am?" These questions transform everything. They turn life from a problem to be solved into a mystery to be lived. They turn suffering from an enemy to be defeated into a teacher to be welcomed. They turn the ordinary moments of existence into gateways to the sacred. The old monk by the stream understood this. That's why his tears were tears of joy. He had found the great secret that most people never discover. You are not a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being expressing itself as a human experience. This changes everything about how we live. It changes how we work, how we love, how we face difficulties, how we experience pleasure. It changes what we value and what we pursue. Most of all, it changes the question of purpose itself. The purpose of life is not to get anywhere else. It's to be fully here, not to become someone else, but to be completely yourself, not to achieve some future state of happiness, but to recognize the peace that's available right now, in this breath, in this moment, in this awareness that notices everything without being disturbed by anything. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, let this understanding seep into your bones. You are not on a journey to somewhere else. You are the destination you've been seeking. You are not preparing for life to begin. Life is flowing through you right now. You are not waiting for the real purpose to reveal itself. You are the purpose, expressing itself perfectly in this very moment. Sleep comes easily when we stop trying to be somewhere else. Rest is natural when we stop resisting what is. Peace is our birthright when we remember who we really are. Let these words fade now into the background of your awareness. Let your mind drift like clouds across an empty sky. You are held. You are complete. You are home. Tomorrow, when you wake, the world may look the same, but you will begin to see it with different eyes. The eyes of someone who knows the secret that the ancient Zen masters knew. The secret that changes everything and changes nothing at all. You are already what you seek. Let your breath deepen as we continue our gentle journey into the heart of ancient wisdom. Feel your body settling even more completely now, like a leaf finally coming to rest on still water. Now, let's explore the story of a young prince who discovered what you are discovering now, that the purpose of life is not what we think it is. This is not just history. This is your story, told through the life of one who walked this path before you. 2,500 years ago, in a kingdom nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas, a child was born who would change how humanity understands the very meaning of existence. But this change didn't happen through grand proclamations or miraculous powers. It happened through the simplest thing of all, waking up. The child's name was Siddhartha, and he was born into a palace that was like a dream made real. Imagine gardens where every flower was perfect, where the air itself seemed to shimmer with beauty. Walls covered in silk tapestries that told stories of gods and heroes. Floors of polished marble that reflected the light of golden lamps. As you rest here now, picture yourself in such a place. Feel the soft cushions beneath you, the gentle warmth of sunlight through precious windows, the sound of fountains playing in courtyards filled with jasmine and roses. This was Siddhartha's world, a world designed to satisfy every desire before it could even form. His father, the king, loved his son with the fierce protection that only a parent knows. He had been told by wise men that his son would either become a great ruler or a great spiritual teacher. Wanting to keep his son in the palace, the king made a decision that would shape young Siddhartha's entire understanding of life. He decided that his son would never see suffering. Every person who entered the palace was young and healthy. Every experience was beautiful and pleasant. When flowers wilted, they were immediately replaced. When anything broke, it vanished before the prince could notice. The palace was a bubble of eternal spring, where pain was as foreign as snow in summer. For 29 years, Siddhartha lived in this paradise. He married a beautiful princess who loved him deeply. They had a son whose laughter filled the palace halls like music. He learned the arts of music and poetry, of diplomacy and warfare. He had everything a human being could want. And yet, like the merchant Kenji we met earlier, something stirred in Siddhartha's heart. A restlessness that no pleasure could satisfy. A question that no luxury could answer. Feel that stirring in your own chest now. Perhaps you know it well. It's not dissatisfaction with what you have. It's a deeper knowing that there must be something more, something real beneath all the decorations of life. One night, unable to sleep despite the silk sheets and soft music, Siddhartha made a decision that would echo through the centuries. He asked his charioteer to take him beyond the palace walls. Just once. Just to see what lay outside his perfect world. What he discovered changed everything. On that first journey, Siddhartha encountered an old man, bent with age, his hair white as clouds, his skin marked by the passage of many seasons. Siddhartha had never seen aging before. The sight struck him like lightning. What has happened to this person? He asked his charioteer. This is old age, my lord. It comes to everyone who lives long enough. Everyone? Siddhartha whispered. Even me? Yes, my lord. Even you. Something cracked open in Siddhartha's understanding that day. The first crack in the shell of his protected life. For the first time, he understood that nothing lasts forever. Not youth, not beauty, not strength. Not even the perfect world his father had built for him. Let this understanding settle gently into your own awareness. Not as something frightening, but as something that makes this moment more precious. The breath you're taking right now will never come again. This particular configuration of awareness, peace, and presence is unique in all of history. On his second journey beyond the palace, Siddhartha encountered a person racked with illness. The sight of suffering without any way to escape it shook him to his core. On his third journey, he saw death itself, a body being carried to the cremation ground while family members wept. Each encounter was like a veil being lifted from his eyes. The comfortable illusions that had shaped his entire life began to dissolve. He realized that his palace was not the world. It was a shelter from the world. And no shelter, no matter how beautiful, could protect him from the fundamental realities of human existence. But it was the fourth encounter that changed his life completely. On this journey, Siddhartha saw a wandering monk. The man owned nothing but the simple robe on his back and a small bowl for food. His head was shaved, his feet were bare, and yet there was something in his eyes that Siddhartha had never seen before, not in all the luxury of the palace, not in all the beautiful faces of the court. The monk's eyes held peace. Not the peace of having everything you want, but the peace of wanting nothing you don't have. "Who is this man?" Siddhartha asked. "A seeker, my lord. One who has left the world to search for truth." That night, Siddhartha stood on his palace balcony, looking out at the star-filled sky. The question that had been growing in his heart finally became clear. If aging, sickness, and death were inevitable, if all the pleasure and beauty in the world could not protect him from these realities, then what was the point of life? What was real? What could he trust? He looked back at his sleeping wife and child, at the golden walls that had been his entire universe. And he knew that to find the answer to his question, he would have to leave everything behind. This is the moment that separates ordinary seeking from true spiritual awakening. Siddhartha realized that he could not find real answers from within the very system that had hidden truth from him. To see clearly, he would need to step outside everything he thought he knew. Feel your own willingness to let go of old ideas tonight. You don't need to leave your life behind like Siddhartha did. But you can let go of old ways of thinking about what life is for. You can step outside the palace of familiar assumptions and see with fresh eyes. In the darkest hour before dawn, Siddhartha quietly left the palace. He traded his royal robes for the simple clothes of a seeker. He cut off his long hair with his sword. He walked away from power, comfort, and security to discover what lay beyond the realm of temporary pleasures. For 6 years, he searched. He studied with the greatest teachers of his time, learning meditation techniques that could quiet the mind and expand awareness. He practiced severe austerities, eating only a grain of rice a day, sleeping on beds of thorns, believing that by punishing the body, he could free the spirit. But neither intellectual understanding nor physical extremes gave him the answer he sought. He found he could enter states of blissful concentration, but when he returned to ordinary consciousness, the fundamental questions remained. He could discipline his body until it was like a skeleton, but suffering continued to exist in the world. One day, weak from years of extreme fasting, Siddhartha collapsed by a river. A young village girl named Sujata found him there, more dead than alive. Without asking who he was or what he believed, she offered him a simple bowl of rice milk. As Siddhartha drank this nourishment, something profound occurred to him. His years of indulgence in the palace had not led to truth. His years of extreme deprivation had not led to truth either. Perhaps the answer lay somewhere between these extremes. This realization would later become one of the central teachings of his path, the middle way. Neither clinging to pleasure nor pushing it away. Neither indulging every desire nor denying every need. a balanced approach that honors both the body and the spirit. Let your own body find this balance now. Not forcing relaxation, but not holding on to tension either. Not trying to stay awake, but not forcing sleep. Simply allowing yourself to rest in the natural rhythm of being. Strengthened by Sujata's kindness, Siddhartha made his way to a large tree near the village of Bodh Gaya. Something in him knew that this was the place. This was the moment. He would sit under this tree until he found the answer to the question that had driven him from his palace. As the sun set on what would become the most important night in human spiritual history, Siddhartha settled into meditation beneath the wide branches of what we now call the Bodhi tree. He made a simple vow, "Let my skin wither, let my blood dry up, but I will not move from this seat until I have found the end of suffering." What happened that night has been told in many ways, with many mythical embellishments. But the essential truth is simple and profound. Siddhartha looked directly into the nature of existence without flinching, without turning away, without protecting himself with pleasant illusions. He saw that everything that arises also passes away. Every thought, every emotion, every sensation, every experience, all of it temporary, all of it in constant flux. He saw that suffering comes from trying to hold on to what cannot be held, from wanting things to be different than they are. But most importantly, he saw through the illusion of the separate self. The I that wants, that fears, that grasps and pushes away, he saw that this too was just another temporary phenomenon arising and passing in awareness. There's a beautiful Zen story that captures this moment of recognition. A monk named Genjo had been searching for enlightenment for many years. One day, while sweeping the monastery courtyard, a pebble flew from his broom and struck a bamboo fence post. At the sound of that small impact, something in Genjo's mind shifted completely. He began to laugh, not with humor, but with recognition. For years, he had been looking for his original face, his true nature, his Buddha mind. And suddenly he realized the sound of the pebble hitting bamboo was his true nature. The awareness that heard the sound was Buddha mind. The one who had been seeking was what he had been seeking. "All these years," he said to his teacher later, "I've been polishing a brick, trying to make it into a mirror. But I was already the mirror all along." This is what Siddhartha discovered under the Bodhi tree. Not some special state of consciousness, not some magical power, but the simple recognition of what had always been present. The awareness that was aware of seeking was what he had been seeking. As dawn broke over the tree where he sat, Siddhartha had become the Buddha, which simply means the awakened one. Not awakened to something new, but awakened from the dream of separation, from the illusion that he was lacking something. His first words after this awakening were filled with wonder. "How marvelous! How marvelous! All beings are already enlightened. They simply don't realize it." Feel this recognition touching your own heart now. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are not on a journey to become someone else. You are the awareness in which all experience arises and passes away. You are the peace that was never disturbed, even by the disturbance. The Buddha's great discovery was not about achieving some special state. It was about recognizing what had always been true. Like the monk who cleaned the temple, like the merchant by the stream, like you resting here now, the seeking itself was arising in the very awareness that was being sought. This understanding completely transformed the Buddha's relationship to life. He had left the palace to escape suffering, But now he understood that suffering was not something to escape. 0, 5. It was something to understand. Pain was inevitable. Birth, aging, sickness, death were part of life. But suffering, the extra layer of resistance, the "this shouldn't be happening," the desperate attempts to make impermanent things permanent, that was optional. For the next 45 years, the Buddha shared this understanding with anyone who would listen. Kings and beggars, scholars and farmers, young and old, all found freedom through his simple teaching. Not because he gave them something they didn't have, but because he helped them recognize what they had never lost. The teaching he offered was like a finger pointing at the moon. The finger was important, the practices, the ethics, the meditation techniques that help quiet the mind and open the heart. But the moon was the recognition itself, the direct seeing of your own true nature. This brings us to the heart of why Siddhartha's story matters for you, resting here tonight. His journey from palace to awakening reveals the real purpose of life. Not to avoid difficulty or maximize pleasure. Not to achieve some perfect state where nothing ever goes wrong. But to wake up from the dream that you are separate from life itself. The Buddha taught that there are 4 fundamental truths that, once understood, free us from unnecessary suffering. First, life includes experiences we don't like. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. Difficulty, loss, change, and uncertainty are woven into the very fabric of existence. Trying to create a life without these elements is like trying to have a coin with only one side. Second, our suffering comes from fighting this reality, from insisting that life should be different than it is, from believing that our happiness depends on controlling what cannot be controlled. This resistance is like swimming against a river current, exhausting and ultimately futile. Third, there is a way to end this unnecessary struggle. Not by changing life, but by changing our relationship to life. By learning to flow with the current instead of fighting it. By finding the peace that exists even in the midst of difficulty. Fourth, there is a practical path for developing this new relationship. Not a path of belief or faith, but a path of direct experience. Simple practices that anyone can use to discover their own inner freedom. Let these truths settle into your awareness like seeds finding fertile ground. You don't need to understand them completely right now. Just let them rest in the quiet space of your heart. There's another Zen story that beautifully illustrates this transformation. A student approached his master, crying, "Master, I am filled with anxiety about my family, worry about my work, and sadness about growing old. Please teach me how to get rid of these feelings." The master listened compassionately, then handed the student a cup of muddy water. "Please make this water clear," he said. The student tried everything, filtering, stirring, adding clear water. Nothing worked. The mud just swirled around, making the water cloudier. Finally, exhausted, the student set the cup down and stopped trying. Gradually, the mud settled to the bottom by itself, and the water became crystal clear. "You see," the master said gently, "you don't need to get rid of anxiety, worry, or sadness. You just need to stop stirring them up with resistance. When you stop fighting these feelings, they settle naturally, and your true clarity shines through." This is what the Buddha discovered. Peace is not the absence of difficult experiences. Peace is the presence of awareness that remains undisturbed even when difficulties arise. Like the clear water that was always there beneath the mud. As you continue to settle deeper into rest, know that this same awareness is here right now. The awareness that notices your thoughts is peaceful. The awareness that notices your emotions is untouched by them. The awareness that notices your body is not limited by physical boundaries. You are not having an experience of awareness. You are awareness, experiencing itself as a human being. This was the Buddha's great insight, and it's available to you right now, in this moment, in this breath. The prince who left his palace thought he was going on a journey to find something he lacked. What he discovered was that he had never left home. What he found was what he had always been. What he achieved was the recognition that there was nothing to achieve. This is the real purpose of life, not to become enlightened, but to recognize that enlightenment is your natural state. Not to find peace, but to discover that you are the peace you seek. Not to solve the problem of existence, but to awaken from the dream that existence is a problem. Let this understanding accompany you now as you drift deeper into the natural rest that is your birthright. You are not a seeker looking for truth. You are truth itself, temporarily playing the role of a seeker. The game is almost over. The seeking is almost done. Like Siddhartha under his tree, you can stop trying so hard and simply be what you have always been. Complete, whole, at peace, already home. The Buddha's awakening under the Bodhi tree revealed something profound about balance. He had tried the extreme of luxury in his palace and the extreme of deprivation in the forest. Neither had led to freedom. True wisdom, he discovered, lies in the middle way, not as a compromise, but as a dynamic balance that honors both our human needs and our spiritual nature. This middle way is like learning to tune a musical instrument. Too tight and the string snaps. Too loose and it cannot make music. But find that perfect tension, and suddenly there is harmony. Tonight, let this harmony settle into your own being. Feel how your body naturally finds balance, not rigid, not collapsed, but gracefully present. This physical ease mirrors the inner balance we can discover in every aspect of life. In ancient China, there lived a master carpenter named Li Wei. His reputation extended far beyond his village, not because he built the most ornate furniture, but because everything he created had a quality that people couldn't quite name. His chairs were perfectly comfortable. His tables seemed to invite gathering. His houses felt like homes before anyone moved in. One day, a young apprentice asked him, "Master Li, what is your secret? How do you make wood become so alive?" Li Wei continued his careful planning of a piece of cedar, each stroke deliberate yet effortless. "There is no secret," he said quietly. "Only listening." "Listening to what?" The apprentice pressed. "To what the wood wants to become." The apprentice frowned. "But wood doesn't want anything. It's just wood." Li Wei set down his tools and looked at the young man with eyes that held the patience of old trees. "Watch," he said simply. He picked up a piece of bamboo and tried to bend it against its natural grain. The wood resisted, then snapped with a sharp crack. Then he took another piece and bent it gently with its grain. It curved gracefully, like a dancer following music. "The wood has its own nature," Li Wei explained. "Fighting that nature breaks it. Working with that nature makes it strong and beautiful. This is the middle way of craftsmanship. As you rest here, feel how this principle applies to your own life. 0. 5. How much energy have you spent fighting your own grain? Trying to force yourself to be someone you're not? Pushing against your natural rhythms and tendencies instead of learning to work skillfully with them? The middle way is not about becoming passive or giving up on growth. It's about understanding the difference between effort and struggle, between growth and force, between discipline and violence against yourself. Li Wei's workshop became a place of pilgrimage for other craftsmen, but not for the reasons they expected. They came expecting to learn techniques and secret methods. Instead, they found a man who worked with such naturalness that his labor seemed like play. One visitor, a famous cabinet maker from the capital, watched Li Wei for 3 days. Finally, he burst out in frustration. "But what do you do? I see you work, but you make it look effortless. Where is the struggle? Where is the great effort I've heard about?" Li Wei smiled and gestured to a tree growing outside his workshop window. "Do you see that oak tree struggling to grow? Do you see it forcing its branches toward the sun?" "No," the visitor admitted. "Yet it grows stronger each year. It bends with storms instead of breaking. It drops its leaves when winter comes and grows new ones in spring. It follows its nature completely, and in doing so, becomes magnificent." "But trees are different from people," the visitor protested. "Are they?" Li Wei asked. "What if humans are also part of nature? What if we too have a natural way of growing, of working, of being? What if the struggle comes from forgetting this?" Feel this question settling into your awareness. What if the difficulty in your life comes not from life being difficult, but from swimming against the current of your own nature? What if there's a way of living that feels more like flowing than fighting? The middle way that the Buddha taught is this natural approach to existence. It doesn't mean being lazy or uncommitted. It means finding the path of least resistance that still leads where you want to go. Like water, which is soft, yet wears away the hardest stone, not through force but through persistence. Li Wei had a student who exemplified the opposite approach. Chen was brilliant and ambitious, determined to become the greatest craftsman in all of China. He worked from before dawn until after dark. He pushed himself to exhaustion, believing that more effort always meant better results. One morning, Chen came to the workshop with his hands shaking from fatigue. He had been working on a delicate carving for weeks, but the harder he worked, the more mistakes he made. The wood kept splitting. His tools kept slipping. His frustration was so great that he threw his chisel across the room. "Master," he said, his voice breaking, "I'm trying so hard, but everything I touch turns to failure." Li Wei looked at his exhausted student with compassion. "Come," he said gently. "Let me tell you about the tea master who forgot himself. As your body continues to relax, let this story wash over you like warm water. There was once a tea master named Rikyu who was invited to perform the tea ceremony for a gathering of important merchants. This was a great honor, and Rikyu spent days preparing. He practiced every gesture until it was perfect. He rehearsed every word until it flowed like poetry. He was determined to create the most exquisite tea ceremony anyone had ever witnessed. The day of the ceremony arrived. The merchants sat in the pristine tea house, waiting to be impressed. Rikyu began with movements that were technically flawless. Every gesture was precisely executed. Every word was perfectly chosen. And yet, something was wrong. The ceremony felt cold, mechanical, lifeless. The merchants shifted restlessly. The whole room felt tense. Halfway through, Rikyu realized what was happening. In his determination to be perfect, he had forgotten the most important element of the tea ceremony: presence. He was so focused on executing techniques that he had lost connection with the simple joy of sharing tea with others. In that moment, Rikyu made a choice that would be remembered for centuries. He stopped trying to impress anyone. He stopped performing and simply began serving tea. His movements became natural instead of perfect. His words became spontaneous instead of rehearsed. The change was immediate. The room filled with warmth. The merchants relaxed. What had been a performance became a communion. The ceremony, which had been flawless but empty, became simple but profound. Afterward, one of the merchants approached Rikyu. "Master," he said, "I have attended many tea ceremonies, but I have never experienced anything like what happened today. How did you create such magic?" Rikyu smiled. "I stopped trying to create anything. I simply allowed the tea ceremony to happen through me. This is the essence of the middle way, learning when to effort and when to allow, when to do and when to be, when to pursue and when to receive." Chen listened to this story in silence. Something in his heart began to soften. "But Master," he said finally, "how do I know when I'm trying too hard? How do I find this balance?" Li Wei picked up one of Chen's carvings, a piece the student had considered ruined. But as he turned it in the lamplight, Chen saw something he had missed. The mistakes had created unexpected patterns. The places where the wood had split revealed beautiful grain underneath. What he had seen as failure, his master saw as character. "The wood is teaching you," Li Wei said. "When you fight it, it breaks. When you listen to it, it guides you toward its hidden beauty. Your hands are wise when your mind stops interfering." "How do I quiet my mind?" Chen asked. "You don't quiet it," Li Wei replied. "You give it something worthy to focus on. Instead of thinking about the result, pay attention to this single cut. Instead of worrying about tomorrow's work, feel the tool in your hand right now. Instead of trying to be the greatest craftsman, simply be present with this piece of wood." This is how the middle way works in practice. Not through grand gestures or dramatic changes, but through bringing full attention to whatever you're doing right now. When you're fully present, effort becomes effortless. When you're completely here, you naturally find the balance between too much and too little. Let this understanding seep into your bones as you rest. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You just need to bring presence to this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this gentle settling into sleep. Chen began to practice what his master taught. Instead of working 18 hours a day, he worked 8 hours with complete attention.